The Trump organization has recently fired as many as 18 undocumented workers. Now, for some of the MAGA guys out there who are listening to this and thinking that this is consistent with Trump's messaging, just understand that there have been a number of undocumented immigrants in recent months who have come forward and called Trump out as former employees of his. They have given us some insight into how the organization works and how many of them are given false documents by the organization, allegedly, in order to be able to continue working there. But the way that I read this is Donald Trump is preparing and kind of setting the stage for more political theater and more, anti-immigration fear-mongering. So at least 18 undocumented workers from 5 of its golf courses in New York and New Jersey in the last 2 months have been fired. The report follows a story from the Times last week saying dozens of undocumented immigrants have been fired from their jobs at Trump properties in recent months. Now, keep in mind that Trump also fought to increase the number of foreign workers that can come into the country just so they can work at his properties. That was one of the first things he did when he got elected as president, and he claimed that he wanted to increase jobs for US citizens. He hasn't actually done that, but he has certainly increased the cap for foreign visas.
So he gets, of course, absolutely no credit for this. He could have done this well before he ran for president if he cared about not having undocumented immigrants work for him. He could have done it in the lead up to running for president if he had any sense at all. Hey, I'm gonna run a whole campaign against immigrants. Maybe I should clean up my own house. Not just like 1 or 2, 5 different properties at least that all have undocumented immigrants, because that might look bad. Nah, he's too cheap. He wants to pay them less, and he's done it his whole career. It goes all the way back to him using undocumented Polish workers to build his buildings. That's part of his MO. That's part of his business model, is pay people less by making sure you use undocumented immigrants. So when he says, I know it's a big problem, he knows because he's the one who has done it his whole life, his whole career. And that part is documented. So, but he still didn't do it while running for president, even though that would have been the savvy thing, because he doesn't care, he's too cheap, etc. Then he's president, he still doesn't do it. And he's out there, the goddamn undocumented immigrants and these people crossing the border, criminals and rapists, etc. Hey, Donald, should we keep hiring undocumented immigrants? Of course keep hiring them. I'm just a goddamn liar who's just stoking up fear and demagoguery. But do I want to use undocumented immigrants? Of course I do. And he's done that all the way up to now. He didn't even use E-Verify.
Yeah, so I want to get to that because that's the most relevant part of the story. Now, the way the Trump organization is trying to spin this is they are attempting to make it seem as though they were the victims of these undocumented immigrants who fooled them into believing that they were, here legally, that they were citizens. In fact, according to
By the way, before you get to this, so that's your big claim to fame, Donald Trump? That you are not as bright as the undocumented workers that somehow managed to sneak into the country. You're like, hey, listen,
well,
I'm like a smart person, but I'm not nearly as smart as an undocumented worker who hoodwinked me. By the way, 18 of them. By the way, a lot more because there's also the seasonal workers that we didn't technically fire, but they are also been removed. So dozens and dozens of undocumented workers happen to just outwit Donald Smart, even though he's like a smart person. No, of course they did it on purpose. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised. They all, I'm sure, have higher IQs than Donald Trump, but it was clearly intentional, as Anna's gonna explain.
Yes, okay, so I wanna give you this piece of reporting from The Hill. Tal Axelrod writes, the company claimed it had been fooled and that employees had lied about their immigration status. However, some of the migrants told the Times and the Washington Post that the company was aware that they were undocumented and their documentation was fake. And I'm gonna provide some more on that in just a minute. But here's something that everyone should be very aware of, especially Trump supporters. The Trump organization admitted that they just didn't use the E-Verify process. The Trump organization said last week it would begin begin to use the E-Verify electronic system to check workers' legal status against government documents. The reason why they didn't check is because they didn't care. And in most cases, according to the testimony of some of these undocumented workers, they knew, employers at the organization knew that they were undocumented and went to a lot of trouble to cover up the fact that they were undocumented, especially when the Secret Service once visited along with Trump at one of these properties.
It's amazing how little the right wing cares about facts, logic, rationale, their own stated principles. The only thing you got to focus is on fear and hatred, and you're all good, right? So, for example, when Obama was doing Obamacare, we were irate because he wouldn't include the public option, and the public option would have made healthcare in this country more affordable, and it would have gone towards more universal coverage. See, because we care about our principles, so we don't like it when our leader does not follow the principles that he says he espouses. Whereas the Republicans are like, oh, I hate undocumented immigrants. Oh, Trump used them, he's so smart for using them. Who cares? Who cares? That's the smart thing to do. You use the undocumented immigrants, they're awesome. I mean, I hate them, but you should use them, like Trump, because he's, who are you? What do you believe? Like, what do you believe outside of hate and fear?
Well, okay, so that's a good question because I kept asking myself the same thing. And I've had a lot of conversations with Trump supporters because I'm curious how their minds work, especially when you hear all these stories about children being locked in cages, at the border. You hear all these stories about, for instance, the longest government shutdown in US history. So what is it that they like about him? And the answer that I usually get back is those aren't issues that affect me, right? It's about me, 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 me. And so I disagree with that kind of thinking, but if that's the way they think, it is what it is. But they're starting to learn that they're paying a price for blindly supporting him because people are filing their taxes, a story that we'll get to later today, and they're realizing, oh wait, these weren't tax cuts for the middle class or the working class. I'm actually paying way more in taxes. I owe the IRS money now that I've filed my taxes.
But this is an issue they said they cared about, not us. They said, oh my God, undocumented immigrants, it's affecting my wages. And the most powerful people in the country are these undocumented immigrants without a dollar in their pocket, right? They're so powerful, they've tilted the scales of wages. But so when Trump uses it, aren't you mad? I mean, if they found out Soros was using undocumented immigrants or Obama, or Hillary Clinton was using undocumented immigrants.
Oh wait, I thought Obama was an undocumented.
Right, they'd be like, oh my God, we knew it, the liberals. Trump used it, oh no problem, no big deal. Now, in the earlier New York Times story where some of the undocumented immigrants that worked for him came out, they explained that the Trump organization actively hid them from the list that they gave to the Secret Service because they know that they're undocumented. So they've known for years. And by the way, that's incredibly dangerous to keep that list from the Secret Service.
Yes.
They don't care, and if you're a right winger and you don't care, okay, then stop bothering the rest of us while pretending to care about undocumented immigrants.
That's exactly right. And to further prove what you're saying about those workers and some of the claims that they're making, they're now being represented by various lawyers. But there was one lawyer who was interviewed by PBS, and he talks about some of these documents and what the Trump organization did to hide some of these undocumented workers. Take a look.
Immigration attorney Anibal Romero said he has turned over the paperwork to state and federal investigators.
As far as Victorina is concerned, the golf club management procured fraudulent Social Security card and a fraudulent green card. And also we've handed over W-2s, we've handed over pay stubs, and a series of other documents which we think are relevant.
Normally, a Social Security number that doesn't match triggers a red flag from the Federal Social Security Administration to employers. It's unknown whether the club received any notices. Unauthorized immigrant Victorina Morales and others who complained about their treatment here say they've received threats.
There are very few people who have legal documentation there.
Yeah, okay, so if they're not concerned about wages, they're not concerned about undocumented immigrants actually working in this country, and they think it's a smart business move or whatever, and they're not concerned about people like Melania Trump and her parents who have questionable visa issues, what are they concerned about? Oh, it might be because these folks are brown. So, You tell me the alternative. If you either tell me, yeah, I'm mad at Trump because he's suppressing wages, he's doing it on purpose. They put out a statement, the Trump organization did, saying I was like really sad to let these folks go because they were part of our family. So you knew they were undocumented all this time. They're like part of your family. But now you're like, oh, God damn it, okay, we got caught, so I guess we're gonna have to fire them. But you say you don't care about any of that. What do you care about? There's only one thing left. They're Latinos. And so I don't like brown people. I don't like Latinos. And it makes me uncomfortable. It's changed my community, like Tucker Carlson talks about. My community used to be all white. Now there's all these Latinos in here. Wages, whatever, who cares? Who cares? Trump's using them, who cares? But look, they don't look like me. They don't speak like me. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like change, I'm a conservative. So it's not even like, is it partly racist? Of course, but is it partly mainly just like, I don't want any change. I don't want any change. These people look different than me. Melania looks the same as me, that's totally fine. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. I think that it's people in general, but specifically conservatives, are afraid of change. And when they do see the demographics changing, they get fearful about it. And so I guess I can understand it on that level. And I don't know, like, whose responsibility is it to make things better? It's a leader's responsibility, right? Our lawmakers' responsibility, the media's responsibility to help explain things to people so it's not so scary. So you understand that these are people who are not trying to cause any harm. But here's the issue. Our politicians use undocumented immigrants and they exploit them to stoke fear. Do you know they exploit those fears for political gain, and that's exactly what Trump did.
Yeah, look, hatred's a big part of it, but the main thing to understand conservatives, especially the ones that are now supporting Donald Trump, is fear. It's not logic, it's not certainly not science. They can't stand science. It's not facts, it's not reason, it's not any of that. The number one thing you need to understand about the conservative mind is that it mainly operates on fear. Fear of change, fear of the others, fear of anything they can't understand, which is a lot, right? So if you press that fear button, then you're gonna get everything you want. And that's exactly what Trump did. While Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio are making policy arguments, etc., Trump came in and it's like a bunch of idiots talking about facts. Fear, 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 fear. And he wouldn't stop pressing that button. And what did he say at his acceptance speech at the RNC? He said, I alone can protect you. And there you have it. It's that simple. You want to trick conservatives? It's the easiest thing in the world. Make them afraid and say that you're the only one who can protect them. The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.